When someone pulls away, when they go silent, when they disappear into the shadows of their own thoughts, our first instinct is to take it personally. We think, what did I do wrong? Did I say something? Was I not enough? But I need you to hear me right now. His silence is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of his world, his battles, his fears, his uncertainty. And the moment you stop internalizing someone else's distance as your own failure, that's the moment you set yourself free. See, silence is not emptiness. It's full of something. It's full of the thoughts he's not ready to share, the emotions he hasn't figured out yet, the feelings he can't even explain to himself. And I know it's frustrating, right? You give someone your time, your energy, your love, and suddenly they go missing. You're left staring at a phone that doesn't light up, checking messages that never come, replaying moments that used to feel real. And in that silence, your mind starts making up stories. Maybe I wasn't interesting enough. Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe if I just reach out one more time. But let me ask you something. When you go through something, when life hits you hard, when you're unsure about yourself, when you don't know what step to take next, do you always have the words for it? Do you always have the strength to explain what you're feeling? No, sometimes you just need space. Sometimes you pull back, not because you don't care, but because you don't even know what's going on inside of you. Now flip that perspective. Maybe, just maybe, it's the same for him. People run from what they don't understand. People avoid what they can't control. And sometimes people disappear not because they don't feel anything, but because they feel too much. That's the part we don't see. That's the part we don't think about when we're stuck in our own confusion. But here's where your power comes in. When someone pulls away, your reaction defines everything. Do you chase? Do you beg for clarity? Do you shrink yourself thinking if you just become a little smaller, a little quieter, a little easier to handle, maybe they'll come back? Or do you stand still, stand strong, and let them figure it out on their own? Because here's the truth. If someone needs space, give it to them. If they disappear, don't chase. If they go silent, let that silence do its work. Because silence is a test of who you are when someone stops clapping for you, when someone stops feeding your need for validation. Are you still standing? Are you still strong? Or does their absence shake the foundation of everything you thought you were? That's the real question. See, the people who disappear, they always come back. Always. Because distance creates clarity. And when the noise of life dies down, when the distractions fade, when the weight of their own silence starts pressing down on them, that's when they realize. They realize who was really there for them. They realize who had peace in their presence. They realize the value of what they stepped away from. But by then, the real question is not, will they come back? The real question is, do you still want them? So the next time someone pulls away, take a breath, let them. Because when you know your worth, you don't beg people to see it. When you understand your value, you don't chase anyone who's confused about it. And when you stand in your power, you don't fear silence. You own it. There's something about distance that wakes people up. Something about losing access that makes a person pay attention. You ever notice that? When you're always there, when you're always available, when you're always the one checking in, making plans, showing up, people start to take it for granted. Not because they're bad people, but because that's just how human nature works. We don't fully appreciate what's always within reach until suddenly it's not. Now, I know what you're thinking, but if they really cared, why would they pull away in the first place? And that's a fair question. But let me tell you something. Emotions are complicated. Feelings don't always make sense. Sometimes when someone is faced with something real, something deep, something that shakes them, they run, not because they don't care, but because they do. And caring, that's scary for some people. See, some folks are comfortable in chaos, comfortable in uncertainty. They like to chase the mystery, the idea of you more than the reality of you. But when they meet someone who's solid, someone who's real, someone who doesn't play games, that's when things get tricky. That's when they pull away, not because you did something wrong, but because they're struggling with something inside themselves. And here's where most people get it twisted. The moment that person pulls away, most people panic. They start texting more, calling more, trying to prove their worth, trying to pull them back in. But all that does, it pushes them further away, because desperation is not attractive. Neediness is not attractive. What is attractive? Confidence, self-respect, the ability to say, if you need space, take it, but I'm not going to sit here waiting for you to figure out what you already should have known. Because here's the thing, you are not a backup plan. You are not someone's second thought. You are not the person they run to only when it's convenient for them. And when you understand that, when you stop chasing, something interesting happens. That person who pulled away, they start to feel it. They start to realize what's missing. Because now, instead of having constant access to you, they have to wonder. Instead of you reaching out, they have to ask themselves, why haven't I heard from them? Instead of you showing up, they have to decide, do I go back? And if I do, will they still be there? See, distance creates clarity. And when someone pulls away and you don't chase, it forces them to sit with their own thoughts. It forces them to confront their own feelings. And sometimes it forces them to realize just how much they actually care. Because the absence of something real, that's felt. Now, this doesn't mean you play games. This isn't about manipulation. This isn't about making someone suffer just to prove a point. This is about understanding your value. This is about recognizing that you should never have to convince someone to choose you. You should never have to beg someone to see your worth. The right person will know. And if they don't know, if they have to lose you just to figure it out, then maybe they were never ready for you to begin with. So the next time someone starts pulling away, don't chase them. Don't try to fill the silence with texts. Don't try to force something that's not meant to be forced. Instead, focus on you. Shift your energy back to yourself. Pour into your own life, your own goals, your own happiness. Because when you do that, when you stop seeking and start thriving, you become the kind of person who doesn't have to chase, because the right people will naturally be drawn to you. And if that person comes back, you decide. You decide if they're worth your time. You decide if they've shown you what you needed to see. You decide if you still want them. Because the real power, it's never been in their hands. It's always been in yours. Everybody wants love. Everybody wants connection, but the question is, at what cost? How much of yourself are you willing to sacrifice just to keep someone around? How much of your energy are you willing to give to someone who isn't giving the same in return? See, there's a fine line between wanting someone and needing them. And the moment you step into that space where your happiness depends on another person's presence, you've already lost control. Detachment is not about being cold. It's not about acting like you don't care. It's about understanding that your peace, your joy, your sense of self should never be dependent on someone else's actions. Because when you attach yourself too tightly to another person, you give them power. Power over your emotions, power over your mind, power over your sense of worth. And when they pull away, when they get distant, when they start acting different, suddenly your whole world feels like it's falling apart. Why? Because you tied your happiness to something you can't control. But let's flip that for a second. What happens when you take a step back? What happens when you stop over explaining yourself? When you stop over giving? When you stop waiting by the phone, checking messages, wondering why they haven't reached out? What happens when instead of chasing someone who's uncertain, you redirect that energy back into yourself? I'll tell you what happens. You get your power back. You get your peace back. You start living for you again. And the irony, the moment you stop waiting, the moment you stop needing, the moment you step into your own life fully, that's when people start to notice. That's when the person who pulled away suddenly feels your absence. That's when they start thinking about you, wondering about you, missing the energy that you once poured into them so freely, because detachment creates space. And space, that's where clarity happens. That's where people realize what they lost. That's where they start questioning, wait a minute, where did they go? Why haven't I heard from them? Why does it feel different now? And look, this isn't about playing games. This isn't about trying to manipulate someone into chasing you. This is about you choosing yourself first. This is about you understanding that no one, no matter how much you care about them, should have the power to dictate your emotional state. And I get it. When you really like someone, when you've built a connection, when you've invested your time and energy, it's hard to detach. It's hard to sit back and say, you know what? If they want to go, I'll let them. But that strength, that ability to let go instead of clinging tighter, that's what separates people who are constantly at the mercy of someone else's decisions from those who walk in confidence, in power. Because think about it. Have you ever noticed that the people who are the most magnetic, the most attractive, the most respected, they're not the ones begging for attention. They're not the ones running after someone trying to force a connection that's slipping away. They're the ones living. They're the ones focused on their purpose, on their growth, on their happiness. They're the ones who understand that love should be a bonus, not a lifeline. And when you move like that, when you stop seeking validation, when you stop trying to control things that are out of your hands, something shifts. You become the person who is chosen, not the one who's constantly trying to be picked. And the moment you become that person, the whole dynamic changes. Because now the choice is yours. Now you get to decide who has access to your energy. Now you get to determine whether that person who pulled away even deserves to come back. So the next time you feel that urge to chase, to over-explain, to prove your worth to someone who isn't showing up for you, pause, breathe, and remind yourself that your value doesn't decrease just because someone else is too blind to see it. The moment you stop waiting is the moment you start winning. Everything in life is energy, everything. The way you move, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, it all sends a message long before you ever say a word. And when it comes to relationships, when it comes to love, the energy you put out dictates exactly how people respond to you. Because let's be honest, you can't chase something and attract it at the same time. It doesn't work like that. See, a lot of people are out here chasing, begging, proving, trying so hard to convince somebody to see their worth. And what happens? The more you push, the more they pull away. The more you overgive, the more they underappreciate. Why? Because neediness repels. Desperation repels. The second someone feels that you need them more than they need you, the balance shifts. And suddenly, the power isn't in your hands anymore. But when you stop seeking and start attracting, everything changes. When you stop trying to convince someone to choose you and instead focus on being someone worth choosing, the dynamic flips. Because now your energy isn't saying, please pick me. It's saying, I know my worth. I know what I bring. And I refuse to settle for anything less than I deserve. And let me tell you, there is nothing more powerful than a person who moves like that. Think about the most magnetic people you know, the ones who walk into a room and turn heads without even trying. They're not the ones chasing, over explaining, or trying to prove themselves. They're just being. They're just existing in their truth, in their confidence, in their purpose. And that energy, that's what draws people in. That's what makes them irresistible. Because here's what a lot of people don't realize. Real attraction isn't about playing games. It's not about ignoring text just to get a reaction. It's not about pretending you don't care when you do. Real attraction is about who you are when no one is watching. It's about what you do with your time, how you treat yourself, how you invest in your own growth, your own happiness. Because when you become a person who is genuinely fulfilled, who is genuinely confident, genuinely secure, people feel that. They feel the difference between someone who is whole on their own and someone who is just looking to be completed. And I get it. When you really want someone, when you really feel that connection, it's hard not to overthink, not to worry about how they feel, not to wonder if you should do more. But that's exactly the problem. When your energy is focused on them, you lose sight of you. You start moving from a place of insecurity instead of confidence. And the second that happens, you're no longer in control. But when you shift your focus, when you start pouring into yourself instead of chasing someone else's validation, you become the person they can't ignore. Because now your happiness isn't dependent on them. Now your energy isn't screaming, I need you. Now your presence is powerful because it's not begging for attention, it's commanding respect. It's commanding respect. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop chasing, the right people will come to you. The ones who see your value will step up. And the ones who don't, they were never meant for you anyway. Because the truth is, you don't make someone chase you. You don't make someone realize your worth. You simply become the version of yourself that no one wants to lose. So if you're sitting there wondering why someone isn't giving you what you deserve, ask yourself, where is my energy going? Am I chasing or am I attracting? Am I pouring into myself or am I waiting for someone else to validate me? Because the moment you shift your focus, the moment you stop seeking outside yourself for love, attention, approval, that's the moment everything starts coming to you. People don't remember what you said. They don't even remember what you did, but they never forget how you made them feel. That's the thing about energy. It leaves an imprint. It lingers. And when someone steps away from you, when they pull back, when they go silent, what they're left with is the feeling of what it was like to be around you. That's what sticks. That's what stays with them long after the conversations have faded, long after the moments have passed. And here's what you have to ask yourself. What kind of impression am I leaving? Because if you're constantly chasing, overgiving, trying to prove your worth, what you're actually leaving behind is the feeling of desperation, of insecurity, of someone who needs validation to feel whole. But when you move with confidence, when you walk away with grace, when you stand in your power and let them figure things out on their own, that energy, that's unforgettable. That's the kind of presence people feel even in your absence. See, we live in a world where people are used to being chased. They're used to knowing that if they disappear, someone will come looking. If they pull away, someone will try to reel them back in. But when you break that cycle, when you don't react the way they expect, when you don't panic, when you don't beg for an explanation, that's when things shift. Because now, instead of them being in control, instead of them dictating the pace, they're the ones left wondering. And here's the truth: people always remember how it felt when they lost something real. Maybe not right away, maybe not in the first few days, maybe not in the first few weeks, but eventually, when the noise settles, when the distractions fade, when they realize that what they had with you isn't something they can just replace, that's when it hits them. That's when they start thinking. Because what most people don't realize is that emotional impact isn't about grand gestures. It's not about doing the most, bending over backward, or constantly proving yourself. It's about consistency. It's about the little things, the way you made them feel safe, the way your presence was a place of peace. And when that presence is gone, when they can't just call you up, can't just slide back in like nothing happened, that's when the weight of your absence becomes undeniable. And I need you to hear this: you are not forgettable. You are not replaceable. But the only way for someone to truly feel that is for you to have the strength to walk away when they don't appreciate what they had. The only way they realize what they lost is if they actually lose it. And that means not always being available. That means not always being the one to reach out, to fix, to fill the silence. Because silence is powerful. Silence makes people reflect. Silence makes people uncomfortable in all the right ways. And when you master the art of pulling back when someone isn't valuing you, when you stop giving energy to people who aren't reciprocating, you force them to sit with the reality of their own choices. You give them the space to feel what life is like without you. And maybe they come back, maybe they don't, but either way you win, because you didn't shrink yourself trying to hold on to someone who wasn't sure about you. You didn't lower your standards just to keep the peace. You didn't beg for what should have been freely given. And that's what makes all the difference. So if someone pulls away, let them. If someone chooses distance, respect it. And if someone can't see your worth, don't try to prove it. Because the ones who truly matter, the ones who truly see you, they won't need to lose you just to appreciate you. There comes a moment when you have to decide, are you going to be an option or are you going to be the standard? Because the truth is, people treat you based on the boundaries you set. They respect what you demand. And if you allow inconsistency, if you allow half effort, if you accept less than you deserve, you're teaching people that they can come and go as they please, that they can give you the bare minimum and still have access to you. But the second you stop tolerating that, the second you make it clear that you are not someone to be taken for granted, everything changes. See, life is too short to sit around waiting for someone to make up their mind about you. Too short to waste time on someone who only shows up when it's convenient for them. Too short to keep giving your heart to someone who doesn't even know what they want. And I get it. When you have a connection with someone, when you feel something real, it's easy to want to hold on, to be patient, to wait for them to figure things out. But waiting for someone to choose you is the quickest way to lose yourself. Because let me tell you something, people know when they want you. They know when you're important. They know when you're valuable. There is no confusion, no hesitation when someone truly sees your worth. So if you have to constantly wonder where you stand, if you have to keep guessing how they feel, if their actions don't align with their words, that's your answer. That's your sign. And I need you to hear this. Someone else's uncertainty should never be your burden to carry. Someone else's indecision should never be your reason to stay stuck. If they don't know what they want, let them figure it out without you. If they aren't sure about you, don't try to prove why you're worthy. Step back and let them realize it on their own. Because the person who truly values you will never need time, space, or distance to recognize what they have. But here's the real power. You don't need them to realize it. You need you to realize it. You need to stop looking at someone else's actions to define your worth. You need to stop waiting for them to see you and start seeing yourself. Because the moment you do that, the moment you stop accepting less than you deserve, you attract people who do see you, who do choose you, who do show up fully. And that's the difference between settling and standing in your worth. And let's be clear, this isn't about playing games. This isn't about acting like you don't care just to get a reaction. This is about moving with self-respect. This is about understanding that you bring something valuable to the table and you refuse to entertain anyone who doesn't recognize it. Because love, real love, shouldn't feel like uncertainty. It shouldn't feel like waiting. It shouldn't feel like wondering if you're enough. So if you're in a situation where someone keeps coming and going, where someone only reaches out when it benefits them, where someone is inconsistent with their effort, ask yourself, why am I still allowing this? Ask yourself, if I truly knew my worth, would I accept this kind of treatment? Because the second you realize you deserve better, the second you decide you won't tolerate inconsistency anymore, that's when you shift the dynamic. That's when you stop being an option and start being the standard. And here's the thing about standards. When you set them high, the right people rise to meet them. The wrong ones fall away. Either way, you win. Because the people who truly see you, the ones who truly value you, they don't need reminders. They don't need distance. They don't need to lose you to appreciate you. They know. So stop waiting. Stop wondering. Stop accepting half-hearted effort. When you walk like you know your worth, the world has no choice but to recognize it too.